Record. All right. Okay. We are going to pick it up. Let's see. Hey, Moshe. We're going to pick it up today and starting on page 212. And I've sent a message this morning, some of you saw it, that we're going to spend a little bit of time with Rav Aviner's commentary. We're going to see a couple of lines in the text. Once again, a little Rav Aviner's commentary. And then we're going to go a little bit of a interesting little path, which will actually have to do with anatomy, spiritual and physical anatomy, and see the connections. So on Rav Aviner's commentary, on page 212, the second part of the page, there's a caption that says, Hatavnit ha'achdutit shel hayikum. And it starts off with the words, Lefanenu tavlaot. Again, that's on page 212 in his commentary. Okay. Okay, so we started off this entire section of Sefer Yetzirah with that little table, little chart that showed the 3, the 7, and the 12 letters of the alphabet and what their meanings were, a little teeny sliver of that concept. So now he's going to talk a little bit about that and show how it kind of permeates throughout everything, and then we're going to go on. Okay, the Fanenu Tavlaot Hatzichot Iyun. Before us are these charts that require us to look into them. The concept is, it is a framework for the unification of the entire universe or existence. Again, the theme has been, and we're going to see this today in multiple ways, that although there are obviously many, many things out there and systems that are out there, nevertheless, we're going to see how they all are unified into one existence. Rabbeinu Yehuda Levi bachar lakdish chashivut miyuchedet leberurim achadim b'sefer Yetzirah. Rabbi Yehuda Levi, the author of the Kuzari, chose to give special attention or importance to explanation of some of the very beginning of Sefer Yetzirah, Sefer Sodi HaMiyuchas LaAvraham Avinu, which we know that this is a book that is attributed to Avraham Avinu. For those of you coming in, we're on page 212. In the middle of that paragraph, that's Kuf Nun Tet. Paragraph starts with the word Lefanenu Tavlaot, and we're on the third line. It's attributed to Avraham Avinu, who taught us the secrets of existence. How is it that from Hashem, who is one, how is it that the one God created a universe that has multiplicity in it, multiple things, whether it's planets and stars, humans and animals, everything. Chomer v'ruach, he gives examples, physical things and spiritual things, tov ra, good and bad, kodesh v'chol, holy and unholy. So zeu koshi sha'machshava hadualistit machshavat hashniyut lo yachla le'akel. He's going to mention 3 different approaches right now to how people, not Jews, hopefully, look at existence and looked at and see that there has to be either more than one God or something to that nature. He says this concept of shniyot. They were not able to, people believed in more than one God, chas v'shalom, were not able to digest this idea that there would only be one. So until they came to the point where they said that there is 2 gods that are source of existence. El hatov ve'el hara, the God of good and the God of evil. Once you've already come with the concept of duality or 2 gods, it doesn't stop even saying there's 4 gods, there's 5 gods, there's 6 gods. So that's the first school of thought, that they look at the existence and there has to be multiple gods. Second school of thought, Lu'umat shitazo, kamu acherim b'amru. There's others who came and said as follows: Lama lehistabech b'shniyot. Why should we come into this and have to deal with this idea of a duality of 2 gods? En shniyot klal. There is no such thing. Sheken ein ra klal ba'olam. There's no evil in the world. No, why do we need a God of good and a God of evil? There's no bad. There's no evil. En sevel. There's no suffering in the world. Hakol tov. Everything's good. Naim ve'ideali, everything is pleasant and ideal. This was in a book written by a man named Leibniz, who lived in the mid-1600s. He wrote a book called Theodicy. He's the one who I believe coined the word theodicy. So if everything is good, then there's no need for repairing anything, and there's only one God. Now, it's a weird way to approach the concept of one God. If you have any interest in this, I may have sent a link, I don't remember, but if not, look up the word theodicy or the name Leibniz, Leibnitz, and you can look a little bit about his book and what he wrote about. And then there's the third group, which some of you have heard of. I'm surprised he doesn't mention this exactly in this topic, but maybe I'm misunderstanding him. Third one is Yesh hatonim she'en benitzah chomer klal. There are those who say nothing physically even exists. Hakol ruach, everything is spirit. Im ra'ita chomer, and if you see something physical, hit'alem mimeno, just disappear from it. I mean, like it doesn't exist. I think he's referring to existentialism, but I can't say for sure. Omnam anu mevarim sholamenu hu olam sharibuy achduti. But we who are ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim believe that this world is a world made up of ribui, which is multiplicity, multiple parts, achduti, but it's unified. Again, I want to give the example of if a person looks at a table, what do they see? They see a table. But in truth, what you're looking at are nails and screws and holes and hinges and other things and pads, whatever else it might be. But it's only one unit, one table. So in a very simplistic sense, he's used this example before, this is how our view of the universe is, that there is multiplicity and multiple parts, yet there's only one creator, not just one creator, but also one theme that runs through everything, which we'll see. Those of you who've been here since the beginning, you'll remember that in the early stages of Kuzari, we discussed this topic. When the Rav told the king that the Jewish people are the chosen people, he was troubled by this. And like, how do you know this? He asked way back when we started the book, how is a Jew any different than any other person walking on the face of the earth? So the Rav explained, when it comes to humanity, everyone is of the same, cut from the same cloth, so to speak. We are human beings who are created in the Tzelem Elokim. You'll see his hadgasha, his stresses those letters. Yesh madrego. There are different levels. Sham lomed hamelech, sham lamad hamelech, et inyan achdut hamudreget. Over there, in the beginning of the Kuzari, the king learned about the different various levels or ratings of this achdut. We live in this world. Meaning that we see everything, and we could also see, like you could look at the table and see one table instead of seeing all its parts. We also say, again, he's going to stress this today, he's going to stress it next week when we talk about it again, that when we look at all these things that are out there, we still accept and understand it's all from the same source of Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. Page 213. The more we look at what we call nature, the more we look at Hashem's creation, the more we are convinced and understand that the source is of one source of Hashem. Skip down to the next paragraph where it starts with the words Shalosh Imot. Shalosh Imot. There are three mothers, Avir Mayim Esh. We already talked about this, the wind or the air, water and fire. He discussed this at length. Everything that exists it comes to fruition, or is expressed, I should say, in three systems: the olam, the shana, meaning time, and nefesh, meaning human beings. Ve'olama fizika, we're only going to go this next couple little paragraphs here. Ve'olama fizika mitgale. In the world of physics, it becomes clear that avir mayim ish, or we are revealed earth, wind, and fire. Ish v'mayim hinam shnei inyanim hafuchim. Fire and water are two opposites. Ha'esh mechamemet v'sorefet. Fire heats and burns. Yilomayim matzmichim u'miravim. Mayim, on the other hand, is what causes things to grow. V'yesh yisod be'emtza, and there's something in the middle. Avir, air. Shino lo kaved k'mayim, it's not heavy like water. V'lo kal ka'esh, it's not as light as fire. Sug acher shemetziut physicality, it's a completely different grouping or type within physics. V'chein ba'adam, the same thing is true in human beings. We have our head. Our head does something. It's ruchani, it's spiritual. Intellectuali, it's intellectual. Machshavi, it thinks. And sichli, some people actually have intellect and seichel and common sense. Common sense is not, by the way, common, I mean. But on the other hand, beten, we also have a stomach. Machshir le'achila, it's the thing that helps us to eat. Si hagashmiut. In other words, within our body, and we're going to have a little bit more of this in depth in a little while, later this morning, we have two extremes. We have our brain, our head, which is able to accomplish unbelievable things, both in terms of spirituality, in terms of physically, what we're able to think of. You know, I know it sounds ridiculous. I still sometimes look at airplanes flying overhead or look at buildings with skyscrapers, like, how did we human beings ever come up with these ideas and think about this? Well, people dreamt and were able to do this. And on the other hand, the other extreme is we have our physical bodies, and he gives the example of our marechet ha'ikul, or our digestive system, which is the epitome of gashmiut, of physicalities, the eating. Yes, it's the ultimate in physicality for the body. Nevertheless, without it, we wouldn't be able to live. And that's what helps to sustain the neshama. In the middle, the body, lev vreyot, our heart and our lungs. So he's dividing up the body. He's going to do this. He kind of gave us a little introduction here, because the Kuzari himself is going to start giving us this anatomy lesson in a little while, between the head, the stomach, and what's in between. Even though the lungs are physical, the purpose of the lungs is the breathing of air, but not like the stomach. So to the heart. When a person is moved by something, they feel it in their heart. You use the expression in English all the time. My heart is overjoyed with happiness, with joy. My heart's bursting. If that's the case, the center of our bodies is the average between our head and our stomach. So it's always one item, the opposite, and something in the middle. That's the synthesis. Same thing is true. Last line, same thing is true with the year. Chom, you have heat, which is summer. Kor, choref. Revaya, growth, which is aviv, and stav, which is spring and fall. Shumatza beinaim. Now, if you go to page 217, it should be, I think, the newer grouping that Cynthia made the PDFs for me for. You go to page 217. We're going to read one line in the text of the Kuzari, and then one short paragraph from Rav Aviner before we get into this anatomy lesson for today. So go to page 217, and I'm going to read one line, and it is inexplicable. Even Rav Aviner is going to more or less say that. The next line in the book in Kuzari says as follows: regarding that chart of the 3, the 7, and the 12. Echad al gabe shelosha. Remember, this is a quote now. Not only is a Kuzari saying this, he's quoting the Sefer HaYetzirah. And he says, 1 on top of 3. Ushlosha al gabe shiva. Avram Avinu writes, 3 on top of 7. The shiva al gabe shnei masar, and 7 on top of 12. Now, for anyone who really thinks that they understand that, please see me later, and I'll be happy to give you a gold star, because most people say they have no idea what he's talking about here. But let's listen to, for a moment, what Rav Aviner says about that one line. Zehu hamishpat hamesakem et kol hatavla. In theory, this one sentence in the Sefer Yetzirah summarizes this entire chart. Utzitut min Sefer Yetzirah is a quote straight from Sefer Yetzirah. Shlosha, Shiva, Shnei Masar, 3, 7, 12. Lema'aseh, in practicality, Lo Tarach Rabbeinu Yehuda Levi lahasbiro. So the Kuzari, Rabbeinu Yehuda Levi, he did not take the time or the trouble to really explain this particular line of Sefer Kuzari, of the Sefer Yetzirah, which he quotes. So why does he do it? What did he do? He's kind of like stuffing and overfeeding the king with all kinds of information. What does that mean first, before we go on? Sometimes when you try to explain something to somebody, among they say, tell me everything about X. So there are things that you might put in there that maybe you yourself may not understand, or they don't necessarily need to be explained, but you want to just kind of show that there's so much out there to know, but here's what we're going to focus on. So too, he's overfeeding and stuffing the king with all this information from the Sefer Yetzirah. The Sefer Yetzirah atzmo herich me'od levavo. If you want to know what this means, he said, you can open up Sefer Yetzirah, and Avraham Avinu explains this in great depth. But for us, we don't need to deal in the secrets, in the hidden aspect of the universe. So why do we learn it in the first place? Because this is reinforcing our belief and our concept that there is order to the existence. Tavnit achat, one structure, shemofia b'chol hametziut, that appears in all of existence, mikoach Hashem echad u'shmo echad, from the power of Hashem, the one God. Hashem echad u'shmo echad mitgale be'ota tchuna shel shlosha shiva shnei masar. Hashem is revealed, this concept, this character trait, or characteristic of God's oneness, appears in the idea of 3, 7, and 12 in many areas. Adam, in human beings, be'olam, in the universe, u'b'metziut. V'zot lo b'mikre, that's not just by happenstance. Ela kol novei me'achduto ha'muchletet, it all comes from the one God, the absolute God. K'chol she'anachnu mitbonenim u'mvinim yoter et achdutiyut sheb'havaya, anu matchilim la'at la'at la'avin yoter et Hashem echad u'shmo echad. The more we see and we look at and we understand this idea, the 3, 7, and 12, and that the multiplicity really all comes from one God, the more we understand Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Now, practically, what does that do for us? I mentioned that this should change your kavanah, your thoughts, your intentions when you say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Again, on the most basic, simplistic level, and not to minimize it whatsoever, when we say Hashem Echad, when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, means there's only one Hashem, there's no two Hashems or nor three. Fine. The other possibility, is that there's one God. The other possibility is there's one, but not two. The other one is what we're starting to see more in depth here, is that although we do exist in a land, in a world, in a universe of multiplicity, it all has Hashem, the one Hashem running through everything. We talked about the golden ratio, we talked about Fibonacci sequence, and we see these things in nature. We see, quote, nature, this is Hashem. We see them in our own bodies. We're going to see that today. So that is to help increase, to help strengthen, le'oded, and encourage more of our emunah. Now, why does our emunah need that? Think about that. Whether you grew up religious or you didn't grow up religious, one of the basic tenets of Judaism is the belief in one God. So why does he spend so much time on discussing this idea, there's only one God? And I think, my personal opinion, is not that he's spending so much time saying, see, there's only one God, there's only one God, there's only one God, but rather how we're supposed to see how that one God permeates everything. When we talked about a few weeks ago, he quotes the pasuk in Od Milvado, one of my favorite phrases in Torah. It doesn't just mean there is no other Hashem. It means that there's nothing that without God's involvement, without God's existence in it. That if something is not in Hashem's plan to exist, it doesn't exist. A grasshopper that might be in your backyard, the wind, the mountain, even the mosquito that stings you, which you wish you didn't have. I brought some that he would have it in existence. For some reason, Hashem wants it in the world. Now, We are going to continue in the text.
Rabbi, there's also,
yes.
sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah.
There's also the inyan that he's din and rachamim at the same time.
Very good.
That's also
very good. Because a person could look at and say, wait a second, I'm taking him a step further than you, Dan, and say, Hashem, Hashem, Kel, Rachum, Mechanun, Erech, Hapayim, Rach, Chesed, Emet, is always, you got 13 attributes there. Then you have Din and Rachamim. You look at Sefer Parshat Bereshit, you have Elohim, and you have Yud Kei Vav Kei. So like we say that one God name represents Rachamim, one Din, or the opposite, Din and Rachamim. Like maybe there are different Reshuyot, Chas v'Shalom, to say. So again, it's just the one thread that runs through everything. That's very good. Excellent. Now, before we look at this next section, now I don't know in your book, let me just see if I can give you an idea where page it's going to be approximately, unless someone already knows. It's going to start with the paragraph that starts Uva Agarim Ha'ele, with these limbs. Let me see what page that might be. It's probably around 460 is my guess. I should really write this down because I don't have the same book you do. Okay, take a look around 457, 458, 459, somewhere around there. Someone tell me what page it actually is once you find it, please. Because even though we're going to use, and if you don't, because we're going to use, it's also in the page 219 of Rav Aviner's book, which is what I'm using. So you can just look at that too. Let me know if you find it, please. I usually rely on Cynthia to tell me.
Hi.
Anybody? Maybe it's page 459, 460, 457, somewhere around there. Again, it starts Uva Evarim Ha'ele. Again, or you can use page 219 of the commentary from Rav Aviner because it's quoted. Okay,
it's on page 461.
461.
461.
Okay,
First paragraph on the.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Page 461. I'm going to write that down here too. So I have that for reference for next time when we get back to this page. Okay, very good. Okay, page 461. Now, before we look at page 461, after all that, I'm going to take a look at a couple things. Okay. On Yom Kippur, we make a statement. It says as follows. After we've gone through the vidui, after we've said Ashamnu, after you've said Al Chet, we say the following phrase, paragraph. You know all the secrets of the universe. And all the hidden things of all living creatures. You seek out, search out the innards of everyone's stomach. And you inspect the kidneys and the heart. Nothing is hidden from you. Nothing is blocked, hidden from your eyes. Therefore, Hashem Elokeinu Kedavatenu shetisachanu al kol chatotenu v'timcho lanu al kol avonotenu v'tchaper lanu al kol pishaenu. Different time you can discuss what's the difference between slicha, mechila, and kapara, which is its own topic. But here I just wanted to point out to you that we use, if you've never noticed this, body parts. Talk about the stomach, talk about the klayot, which are the kidneys. We talk about the lev, the heart. Then we have another thing that you may also be familiar with that you say Shabbat morning in Nishmat. Look where that first star is on the second line. All things standing up will bow before you. And all hearts will fear you. And all innards, uchlayot, and kidneys, will sing to your name. Now, if you've never paid attention to these words, and this is the first time that you're really hearing the translation, you should be scratching your head like, what? What do you mean my kidneys are going to do something and my stomach's going to do something and Hashem's looking at my kidneys? And what I need, if I want, God forbid, something my kidneys, I'll go to Dr. No. My mind just went blank.
A nephrologist.
Yeah, the nephrologist, but to Dr. Slatke, Dr. Slatke, yes. If I really wanted a nephrologist, I can go to a friend of mine who's a nephrologist. It's actually, by the way, there's two opinions. Ashkenazim say kol atzmotai tomarna, and Sfaradim say kal atzmotai. They say it's a kamatz katan, not gadol. Believe it or not, long time to get used to saying. But I said, like, all of our bones will also say mikamocha, michamocha, who's like you. You're right. So it talks about the bones. We see that in a few places also in Tefillah. Shomer kol atzmotai achat mehen lo nishbara. But as opposed to the bones, we also say a couple other places we use this. So first of all, what's it based on? Where's the pasuk that it's based on? So it's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. It says, "Vashem tzvakot shofet tzedek bochen klayot valev mehem ki elecha giliti et rivi." Forget the meaning of the entire pasuk now because we're not learning Yirmiyahu. But the basis of the words that are used in Tefillah are bochen klayot valev. What does that mean? So the Mitzudat Zion gives us a little hint. Klayot, behem makom ha'etza. That the klayot is the location in our body that gives us the ability to give etza, idea, come up with ideas. What does that mean? So let's take a look at the text. I'm going to do this a little bit slowly to get through this. Okay, and I apologize in advance for there being in here a very sexist remark. You're talking, let me give you a little background before I give you that sexist remark. You'll see it throughout Talmudic times, two parts to it. One is Nashin da'atan kalot, that women have a lower level of intellect, or their brains don't work as well as men's. That's a very poor way of translating, but that's the way I'm going to say it. In the same, on the mitzad sheni, on the other hand, we also know, we've discussed that women are given a higher level of intellect as far as bina, being able to intuitively understand things better. Let's just keep it at that. Okay, that's the one thing that you need to know. So, okay, let's move on. So now we're going to take it with a little bit of an anatomy lesson. One more introduction to that next paragraph. I don't need to see who says yes or no to this, but some of you are probably into Chinese medicine, such as acupuncture, herbs, holistic medicine, that which treats the entire person as opposed to just symptom. I will just actually put a parenthesis here and add something about holistic medicine. And it's not off topic at all. We're going to see why if we get to it today. The idea of holistic medicine is treating the entire person, not just the symptom that he or she walks in with. I wasn't a very big believer in this. I grew up a very Western culture, obviously, and idea about medicine. You take medicine, medicine helps you, hopefully. I had a severe problem of migraine headaches many, many, many years ago. I was before my first child was born, so it's over 30 plus years, 34 years ago, 33 years ago. And it was suggested to me to go to a homeopath, who happened to be an MD, but he practiced homeopathy. And I didn't even know what that was. I never had heard the word before. But I said, okay, I have nothing to lose. Everything I'm trying, whether it's aspirin or ibuprofen or hot packs, cold packs, nothing was helping me. I was dealing with migraines. So I went to this homeopath and I spent 3 hours with the doctor, and he didn't examine me once. Didn't look in my eyes, didn't look at my ears, didn't look at my nose, didn't give me a physical. But we spent 3 hours together talking. And he asked me super, super detailed questions about my life. Not personal or private, although some was. But very specific questions. He asked me, for example, here, take a look on the men's shirt. Many of you know that there are many long sleeve shirts have 2 buttons. And he asked me, do I like to button it on the first button or the second button? So I said, I always button it on the first one. I think, like, what the heck does it have to do with anything? Well, it was one of many, many, probably hundreds of questions he asked me. After the end of our interview, And I kept waiting, again, Mr. Western Medicine here. I'm waiting for him to pull out a stethoscope, pull out an otoscope, pull out something. Nothing. Didn't even take my blood pressure. He said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you a prescription for something called sulfur. I said, sulfur? Sulfur is just an element, I guess. It's something. I don't know. It's something. I don't know. Sulfur is at the edge of a matchstick. He says, what you're going to do, he gave me an envelope. Oh, he didn't give me a prescription. He gave it to me. He gave me an envelope that had sulfur in it, pills. He said that when you wake up in the morning, before you even get out of bed, you're going to pour one sulfur pill into a piece of paper or something, and then put it under your tongue and let it dissolve. What's going to happen is you're going to end up with probably the worst headache of your life. But then when you finish that worst headache of your life, you're not going to have migraines probably for a very long time, but they'll come back eventually. So he then explained what he's talking about. He determined based on all these detailed questions that my body was deficient in sulfur, and that if I would add sulfur into my body, that after X amount of time, which he determined to be approximately 1 month, my headaches would go away. The reason they would come back, he says, because of the fact there's pollutants in the air that eat away at various minerals and elements in our body, that eventually it will need to be redone. I will tell you, he changed my life. After that 30 days, I did end up with the worst headache of my entire life. It was horrific, but it was like cleansing the body, I guess. And then for years, I didn't have headaches again. However, starting a few years later, I started to get them a little bit more frequently. I figured, you know what, I got to make an appointment with this guy. Now, this man, Dr. Shapiro, I still remember his name. You had literally a 6-7 months wait time to be able to get in to see him. So I made an appointment for him on whatever, January something or other, and I made it back in the summer. And as it got closer and closer, I realized, hey, Andy's pregnant. That'd be kind of funny if she goes into labor the same day I'm supposed to have this appointment, and I'm not going to miss it. Neither thing. I didn't want to miss the labor and delivery. I didn't want to miss the appointment with the doctor. Wouldn't you know it, January 5th, 1992, Andy goes into labor, and that's the day of my appointment. My appointment was for like 10 in the morning, and thank God she went into labor early. Had the baby pretty quickly. Mazel tov, and I ran to the doctor. When I came to the doctor, I told the nurse, congratulate me, we just had a baby. Oh, congratulations. When was the baby born? I said, an hour ago. I said, what are you doing here? The baby was just born. Why aren't you with your wife? I said, I'm not going to wait 8 more months for this next appointment. So you get sulfur again. And the long story short is I didn't take it because even though I was getting headaches, I couldn't go through that bad headache one more time, that horrible headache. And I decided not to. So I just ended up tossing the pills months later. But why am I telling you this long-winded story? Because what works within holistic medicine and homeopathy, Chinese medicine, is to look at the entire person and not at the symptom, and not at treating a symptom which may indicate something else. It takes into consideration mind, body, and spirit, literally. And you would think that, wow, it's like this ancient Chinese secret. For those of you who know that pop culture reference from a commercial from many years ago, ancient Chinese secret and holistic medicine is this new age medicine. Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Kohelet, Ein kol chadash tachat hashamish. There's nothing new under the sun. With that in mind, let's take a look at this next paragraph. Okay, he's going to start telling us that our physical bodies have a dual purpose. Many parts of our body serve 2 purposes, both physical and spiritual. Kimo, for example, klayot yoatzot. Now he's going to explain this right now. Just take it on face value. Our kidneys give counsel. They give us ideas. Tchol, our spleen, sochek is the source for laughter. The chaved in our liver, koes causes us, or is the source of our anger. Doesn't mean it makes it. I don't want to say it means that we have a liver, therefore we get angry. We're going to see what this means. The kevar in our stomach, yeshena, causes sleep. Now he's going to prove his point first for a very unusual way, not the most PC way, not the most user-friendly way, and definitely not the most mixed audience way. Ve'inenu tema shiya liklayot koach b'hatavat ha'etzah. We shouldn't be amazed or wonder, why is it that our kidneys have the power to give us the ability to have counsel, to think of ideas and etzot? We see this by also, I'm going to read the paragraph, sentence and explain. When we see a person who is a eunuch, I don't know about you, I don't know any eunuchs, but a person who is a eunuch who's had parts of his body removed to make him a eunuch, he becomes has a lower level of intellect or intelligence, I should say, than even women. It's your slam against women. Since he is no longer has that part of his body, he no longer has his ability to come up properly with good and proper etzot. Now, he's using a strange example. We know it affects them physically as far as their voices are concerned. You know, they used to castrate small boys in certain communities in order that to keep them for various reasons, either to keep them that they wouldn't be sexually active or to make them better singers so they would have a higher voice. That's not, but so we know it affects physically. He's saying also here that affects them mentally. Now he's going to talk about what these other parts are. Utchol sochek. What does it mean that tchol, the spleen, leads to to laughter? Because what does it do? It purifies the blood in the body. And the gallbladder to which the spleen is attached cleanse the body from any kind of extra, from any impurities. And by their being cleaned out of the body, it will engender happiness and laughter. Now, obviously, I'm going to read another couple lines. It needs some explanation, but at the same time, it's the same theme in all these different organs. The kaved koes, what does it mean? The kaved, the liver, is the source of anger. Bavur hamerirot hamit yaldotpo, because of the bitterness, the bile that's found in the kaved that goes through it. The keva yeshena. What does it mean? The stomach. This one's about, I bet everyone can relate to. The stomach is a source of sleep. Think the words food coma. After you eat a nice big Shabbat meal, and boy, if you have cholent, what do you want to do? I mean, I don't think after eating cholent on Shabbat, you feel like going out and running 10K, right? I don't think so. You don't just go straight to sleep, which, by the way, is a very bad idea to eat and go straight to sleep. Kinui lichlei hamazon. The idea of the stomach connecting to sleep. In other words, if I were to say to you, name something that makes you tired, you may say exercise, you may say, I don't know, reading a lot because it makes your eyes tired, so you get tired, not sleeping enough. I don't think most of us would come right away and say eating, but eating really does cause sleepiness. Now, yes, there's certain foods that make you sleepier, such as milk. We see that obviously in the story of Yael and Dvorah and Barak and Sisra, which if you know what I'm talking about, great. If not, you can look it up and say for Shoftim. Now, there's certain things he just mentioned. He mentioned the klayot, he mentioned the tchol, he mentions the kaved, right? The mara, the gallbladder. But there's some like major things he doesn't mention, right? Below zachar halev. First of all, he doesn't mention the heart. The heart is the king. The heart runs the show. Below akrum, nor did he mention the diaphragm. Nor did he mention the lungs. Why? Because the heart, the diaphragm, the lungs, the diaphragm and the lungs are the servants, so to speak, are used by the heart. They're not the shamashim for the rest of the body. The purpose of the heart, the purpose of the lungs and the diaphragm are related to the heart. They relate to the rest of the body indirectly, but directly to the heart. So he leaves the heart out. But what about the moach? What about the brain? Why not mention the brain does blood? That chol does this and that. But the brain is involved. Automatically, it's included in everything, because the brain, without the brain, nothing happens in the body. Where's he going with all this? What's he mentioning this for? So the first thing he's mentioning all this for is to tell us that within our physical bodies, somehow it not only serves a physical action, but also has a spiritual action as well. In this case, whether it's the laughter, whether it's the sadness, whether it's the anger, the odin. Furthermore, there are organs. These organs that he's mentioned are below the level of the diaphragm. Hacholek sod. They divide the secret. Mitei shehem hateva rishon. V'akrum cholek bein ha'olam hateva v'olam ha'chayim. The diaphragm in the body, I'm pointing to, you can't see me because I'm sitting. The diaphragm over here separates between two parts of our body. The upper body, the lower part of our body. The physical and the spiritual. Where's the physical part of our body? It's below the diaphragm, right? It's our eating, our reproductive organs, our walking. Our spirituality is from the upper part of the body. The heart, the mind. Again, I'm probably sick of hearing me saying this and talking about it, but learn Tanya, you learned this early on. And I think it's Parak Dalet, is an anatomy lesson from the Rebbe, from the Alter Rebbe. It's just magnificent and unbelievable how the heart and the mind interact. But that's the upper part of the body. Like the neck is the intermediary between the world of life and this power of the world of speech. This book Timaeus, written by Plato, discusses this idea. Our neck also separates. Our koach hadibur is up here. Our power of speech is up here. Our power of life is down here. Our heart, our lungs, everything else. So what's he doing here before we go on? Remember, this whole concept here has been duality, two parts. There's the yin, the yang, for lack of a better term, which I can. There's life and death, good and bad, dark and light. But the same thing exists in our bodies. We have different parts. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, wait a minute. Now I understand why some people wear a gartel for davening, right? Matter of fact, we're going to talk about that next week, maybe.
I was just going to mention that to ask if you know about the Hasidic joke against the Misnagdim when they.
Right. So why would the gartel around the waist and not further up by the diaphragm? So we'll see. We'll see, because it's more than just.
No. The joke is that the Hasidim say that the girdle of a misnagid is his tie around the neck.
I heard differently. The joke is that when the Sefer Torah, Nazim, a Sefer Torah that's puzzle, you put the girdle on the outside because it's like, never mind.
Very good.
Okay, let's continue. Let's finish this little paragraph. The basic elements come from the lower part of the body. What does that mean? There is where life originates. Remember, all the sexual organs are below the level of the diaphragm, and that's where the life source comes from. And from there comes the ubar, comes the fetus, which is formed from the four earth, wind, fire, and what I just forget. My mind's a blank. Okay, good. And water. Hashem chose certain parts of our bodies to be represented in korbanot. Have you ever noticed when you learn Sefer Vayikra, which we're going to come to in a few weeks, it talks about the parts that we bring as korbanot, the klayot, the kaved, the dam, the chelev. There's never a moach, a brain that's used as part of a korban. There's never a lung of the animal. There's never the diaphragm. There's never the heart. Why not? Because what is the korbanot? What are they? They are representatives of, in general terms, that because I sinned before my creator and I deserve to die for that, instead of me, my body is going to be instead of the animal's body instead of mine. That should have been my klayot and my dam and my yoteret hakaved and everything else. Why dafka those things are on the mizbeach? Because it's representative of the upper part of the body. The lower part of the body, the living part, the physicality of our world. Because it's with our physicality that we sinned against Hashem, et cetera, et cetera. That which Rav Avinu next week, he'll get into a little bit more explanation when we look at that. So, why did I mention this whole business holistic? I want to close with this because Rav Avinu will talk about it next week, but I don't want to leave that hanging in the air. When a person goes to a doctor and says, I'll give you an example. This Friday, I have to talk to my doctor. I have a problem, whatever, with my neck. And he could just look at it and say, okay, you got to here, take this medicine. Here's the problem with the neck. But if he takes into consideration what's causing the problem, is there possibility the spine to the neck? Is it something to do with the way you sleep? Is it something to do with stress? Oh, wait, does it have to do with stress? What does that have to do with how I sleep? What does that have to do with my spine? Well, maybe because I'm just obviously just talking out loud or making stuff up. Maybe because the stress causes the compression, something to the top of the spine, which radiates into the neck. In other words, I'll take it a different direction. A person who goes and has to see a therapist, which, by the way, everyone should, in my opinion. Everyone needs one. When a person sees a therapist, they're not sitting there and giving you a physical exam necessarily, although you may see a doctor before going to a therapist. And there's a lot of talking involved. What's the purpose? It's to see how the systems are all working. You are not just a system, a digestive system. You're not just a system, a circulatory system. You're not just a person, what do you call the breathing? The whole, your breathing system, your respiratory system, yes, or respiratory, if you're speaking different type of English. Yeah, so you're an entire amalgam of all these things. And we see here also that they have a physical effect on your spirituality, on how you go through things. He's going to talk about this idea next week, that when a person has a problem with their ikul, with their digestion, and they just can't go to the bathroom, how it not just affects their physical body, but mentally the inability to focus, to concentrate, that like it's stopped up in your brain as well, in your spirituality and your mentality and your ability to focus. So that's the concept of homeopathy. That's the concept of looking at the entire person. So now we come back to this whole idea. We have the digestive system, the respiratory system, the circulatory system, everything else. And you have the bones and you have the sinews and you have but it's one body. And we have to understand that it works as a system, as one. So too, that's why we're called Olam Katan. Remember, the Rambam refers to the human being in the Moreh Nevuchim. We saw this as an Olam Katan, a small world, because the world is the same thing. One thing doesn't act without the other having something to do with it. When an earthquake underwater happens, and we know the ravages of the tsunami and what could happen. We saw just a few years ago, it's horrific. So there are these ripple effects within our own bodies as well, both physical and spiritual. Okay, so that I think is enough for today. We're going to pick it up next week on page 219. We're going to look at what Aviner has to say about this and about holistic concept of looking at ourselves. And then we'll continue in the text a little bit more for the Sefer Yetzirah that he quotes. And then we're going to skip a few pages and go to the back and forth questions between the Rav and the king. Tov, have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eva.
You're welcome.
Great.